What is happening, man? Super excited to be back on another episode of the One Big Fire podcast. Got the boys in the house. No guest this week, just us. So we get to dive in, chop it up, hit things that are top of mind, pressing, and Al, let's get it, man.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot to be excited about, and I'm looking over at my hit list over here, and I just smile. I look over at my hit list, and I'm like, "Yep, they're an application. Yep, they're an application. Yep, they're an application." I got some studs in there. I got a couple new agents. Just placed someone in OKC,
nice,
with a team leader that I didn't even know who she was, but new agent, and we're using the new co-sponsorship that's hasn't even been announced yet. I know they're not calling it that. They're calling it the FLQA, but man, just the momentum right now. Jay, you just said you brought over a 100 agent team. Caleb, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, man? I'm hearing, it's really interesting because, I'm having, the same as always, a lot of conversations with agents, from, the machine that we built that's, recruiting a lot of people coming over, a lot of better, a lot of agents that close, 12 to 25 transactions, but it feels to me like there's been more bigger teams, independent conversations, bigger players that are all about to launch. And so, it feels good. It's been a little while since I felt like that. So I love seeing, the bigger teams coming over and the bigger independents and, the influencers and all that. That's all good for the company. So
what is the kind of common theme pain point that they're feeling to make a move? Are they coming for moving away from pain? Are they coming over to move more to opportunity?
Yeah.
The whole pain pleasure. So
yeah, it's great. It's a great question, John. I think, a couple of them have been just timing. They would have came earlier, but they were in a deal or in a contract, some type of contract that they couldn't get out, or it didn't make sense to leave. And those are all super positive. But I think a lot of folks are coming for the opportunity. I think we just experienced the slowest 2 years in real estate since 1995. So, the upside here is, maybe it's not this year we see the big uptick, but certainly the next year. So I think there's a lot of excitement and the president that's coming in, the things that are going to be announced, on Inauguration Day, I think is going to be interesting to watch. All things that'll be good for housing. So, I think we're seeing, people that are, struggled for a couple of years to figure out how to, build a sustainable, consistent business. That's been a lot of the individual agents that I talk to are they all say the same thing. It's 100% of them. What I was doing before isn't working anymore. I need something more consistent. I need I need something that's going to bring me a couple deals a month consistently, 2 to 3 deals. And so that's the conversations that, the individual agents are having. And, they're just not getting support. They're not getting help. They're not getting anywhere with, and they're done with that. 2 years of it is enough. And so I think that's been the temperature of the conversations that I've had. And then, a lot of influential bigger teams. Even those teams struggle just as bad, right? Even when the market's down, even though they're doing a lot of numbers, it's a lot of pressure on them to get back in production. The grind is worse, right? So you're just grinding. And when things are really good, you kind of, you can kind of pick and choose the deals you want to do. But when times are tight, you find yourself out in the grind again. And, that will make you wake up and go, man, there's got to be a better way. There's just got to be a better way. And, when the gate of the mind is open, the better way is very clear. And that is definitely EXP. So that's been, kind of the conversations I've been having. I don't know, Al, anything different you're feeling or hearing?
John and Jay, I want to get your opinions on this. And I do want to mention, we're going to talk about, our friends in California right now who are, really just suffering a devastatingly unimaginable, experience with the fires going on and literally burning entire cities down. So many people being affected by it. Our boy Kyle Whistle and his team, even though he's not in LA, they're down in San Diego. They're throwing their head in to best to help. Shout out to Kyle for just being an amazing human being. and coming in. But we're going to touch on that in a minute here, because there's some things that I want to talk about, or what's going to happen in that area, because we're talking about one of the most wealthy areas with the most highest priced, that's completely decimated. There's nothing left. And so they're starting from scratch, and it's going to take a long time to rebuild. But getting back to, the agents right now that we're seeing, the teams that we're seeing, there's a theme that keeps coming up. And I want to know, and Jay, I think it was about a week ago. It was a Saturday night. I was feeling good. I had a couple glasses of wine in me. My boss didn't go, and I had to get them out. And so I talked about this theme that I'm seeing, and I'm wondering if this is going to be the next thing, because I'm seeing teams merging together. I'm seeing, like, when you kind of think about the evolution of the team, and we had that awesome podcast the three of us did on Death of the Real Estate Broker, Death of the Real Estate Team. What does that actually mean? What we've seen over the last 7 years is we've seen the team entity change and actually start gobbling up brokerages. What I mean by that is my brokerage, my little brokerage, became a team. Big, I don't know if necessarily Chuck Fauzi and them did it with Revelation, but we see a lot of these brokerages that come in and they merge over here to EXP and they become a team. So the team is gobbling up the brokerage model, which I think is fascinating. But have you guys seen or heard of teams combining forces? I know we tried to do it a couple years into this, Jay, with our boy Matt Chase and the Chase brothers. That was a fun roller coaster ride.
Right.
And it didn't work out for certain reasons, but there were things that actually were beneficial to both of our teams. We just couldn't make the culture thing work. But I really think that's what we're going to see, a lot more of consolidation. We're seeing teams combine. Are you guys seeing that? And what are your thoughts on the idea of, like, teams combining into a mega team type of situation?
Yeah, I've been hearing bigger teams gobbling up smaller teams. That's been, I think the strategy around, Zillow and how they're setting up, these Zillow Flex accounts is enabling, some of the better operators to kind of, put teams together and go, expand into markets and things of that nature. But outside of that, I haven't really heard that many teams going together. I mean, it's hard. I mean, as you know, Al, I would say that sounds like a very challenging path to take. And, you have to have the two, leaders with the right egos in place to do something like that. And you got to know how to co-brand, or determine how you're going to effectively build your brand, which would be a very challenging thing for most people, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I get to, yeah, it's a good, I mean, in theory, it makes sense, right? Hey, we can share resources, we can come together. Our experience of this was, are we going to buy Caldwell Banker Crossroads, or are we not going to buy Caldwell Banker Crossroads? And, consolidating and running as one for, in 12, 18 month stretch. And it was night and day fighting each other, because you have one culture versus another culture, and different leadership styles and different leadership principles, different values. So it made it really, really challenging, really, really hard to make that come together, to make it work, to make it make sense. Where I think you could is kind of a bleed out. If you're kind of the ink blot, theory, if you're kind of expanding, like what we were able to do, just in a simple example, bleeding marketing over into Duncan, Oklahoma, finding a true rock star. She's still there to this day, which, like, God bless her, but just bleeding out, it makes sense. I think, the one thing that we found, and this kind of goes back to my second point, Patrick Lencioni wrote a great book called The Motive, and it was one of the books that he released later on. I think he threw it out there in 20, and we know how, instrumental the advantage was for us in our career and our thinking as business owners and moving into the future. The Motive should have came out even before the advantage. And the fable inside of The Motive is two companies coming together. two CEOs coming together, and one had to let go of the ego. And that's the whole outcome over ego concept. Get what is right. Let's get to right. And let me get where my heart is. Only one can be CEO, right? There's only one name in the box. You can't have two head of company. So one, when you do bring that merger together, somebody's got to relinquish, I'm not head of company. And it's for anybody that's coming together with it, don't do it unless you read the motive, because what it talks about is one of them ends up taking head of marketing and one of them takes head of company, and they came together. So I think it's just understanding that. In theory, it makes sense, but it takes great leaders and let me step aside, not let my ego get in the way. What is the goal? What are we trying to accomplish? Outcome over ego. And let me get in my lane and you get in your lane, and then let's go. And you look at why, statistically, that's probably the best move to do, because what's the probability of you going into a new market and starting from scratch that you're going to succeed? What is this failure success rate of new entities, new companies? That's why, the whole mergers and acquisitions, why just go gobble them up, go buy them instead of trying to start it from scratch, is just a higher probability of success.
Yeah, that makes sense. So essentially, John and Al, you guys think that this is more of a new version of expansion into new marketplaces? That would make sense to me, because like everything about this sounds like, that's gonna be go over like a turd in a punch bowl.
You'd mentioned Zillow, and I don't want to make the conversation solely about Zillow, but I think that certain people, and I'll name the first one that comes to mind is Kyle Whissel, because we had an extensive conversation about what he's done in San Diego with his Zillow Flex account. You can't get Zillow Flex unless you're on Kyle's team. He literally owns the whole county. Like, you can't buy a zip. It's all his. He's monopolized it. And from a strategic standpoint, I mean, that's huge. Like that, and do you have to play the game? Yes. It's the same thing. I started, the correlation that I started making with Kyle's situation, it reminded me kind of an REO. How some people went REO when REO started getting popular, and you saw the REO guys went from driving, a little Ford Focus to a Mercedes. And of course, then that went away. But you guys remember that back in 07, 08, 09, 2000, by 2010, those REO guys were driving really nice cars. But it was a system. They were playing a different game. They had very, very little upside. Like, their revenue per deal was very low, but it's a volume play. You have to have your systems together. And the same thing with Zillow. Yes, but you can't look at it as that initial transaction. You have to look at it, the lifetime value of that client. Yeah, you might be getting a 35 to 40% commission, or referral fee taken right off the top. Then you split it with the team, and there may not be a whole lot left over at that point, but they're not looking at it that way. They're looking at the long game. But think about all of the clients that are just stacking into their database for the lifetime value of that client. And they're looking at it over the long. They're not going to pay that 40% the second transaction, the third transaction, or any referrals they give. So I like it. What it boils down to in a kind of a caveman thing is, if you had two teams and they were operating, obviously both have a P&L with expenses. One of the goals, I think initially, just the way my brain works, is if you combine those two expenses and you looked at their total amount of expenses, the goal would be to reduce that amount as much as possible through efficiencies. So that would be reason one. Reason two, the big team. Why would the big team want to suck up the small team? For their producing agents. It's to reduce expenses and increase their productive agent count so that they can sell more units. Those are the only two reasons I could think of for merging. But there's a lot of these other things that have to be figured out, like culture.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Big time. Yeah. Culture is the big thing, right? And you think about like even as we were kind of talking through this, and my default always comes back down to leadership. And you think like we're starting to see a bunch of people change, a bunch of people leave, and it's a leadership equation, right? They're probably not being led the right way. The leadership is not being provided, and so I mean that they start looking in that direction. Man, I just have seen people leave situations for some of the oddest things.
I know.
But when you distill it down, what is it? It's they're just not being led or being felt like, they're of value to that organization. And I think it's just a leadership void that you're starting to see, and especially a bunch of these mom and pops and legacy brands that are out there. They just don't have the value and the leadership capabilities to really pour into the people.
You're not wrong, John, but the other side of that coin is that as a vast, I would say, majority of real estate agents aren't coachable. I mean, there's a portion that are coachable, but the majority of them aren't. I mean, would you say that 60%, which sets us right over the 50%, would you say that 60% of real estate agents that have licenses are coachable? I wouldn't say that.
That's a
no
8%.
I would say, well, how many real estate agents closed a transaction last year?
Right. Start there.
And then what is the percentage of those people that are coachable?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be a really much more interesting number there.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely to your point. But I think it's those that are looking for a bigger future. And I just keep defaulting back to the motivation and vision equation that PBD talked about, Al, in the training, right? He said, the number one indicator that I see is that if you struggle with motivation, just means you have no vision. If you have a strong enough vision, you never need to be motivated. It's always there. And for real estate agents listening to this, guys, if you're doing it for the money, once your financial needs are met, foot off gas. I mean, we learned that experience. Like, I remember we were sitting in the house, cuz, in your office in Con Valley, out in the house.
Yeah.
And we're really trying to dial in this salaried agent model, right? We're getting you out, we're moving Stace in, and we're like, where does compensation need to be? Well, I don't know. Let's look at the last 3 years of what was earned within $2,000 plus or minus. Why is that? Well, let's look at our top agent, plus or minus $2,000 over the last 3 years. Why is that? And you start to look at it and you're like, once financial needs are met, if there's not a big enough purpose, a big enough vision, your foot is off gas. And, can you stoke that fire? That fire has been stoked in those guys, right? Like, you go back and you look at, and you have the conversation with Stace today of who Stace was then. Completely different human being, big purpose, fire lit. Like, he will like get out of his way, right? Because he has a big purpose. He has a big vision. And I think he's proof you can kindle that. I mean, you're talking about the guy that would never put a damn Audible account on his phone to just seeing the change is possible.
Yeah.
But it has to be that big vision to be able to push through.
I mean, look at Elon. I don't know if you guys saw that interview with Elon, richest man in the world, and he still is working on average 120 hours a week. Yeah. And that means that there's only about 7 hours a day to sleep and do other things because he's operating all these companies, and he doesn't need to. He doesn't have to do anything. And yet he's still in the pocket in a very obscenely obsessive big way. Like, ridiculous 7 days a week, 120 hours a week, 7 days. I don't think that's healthy. I mean,
I don't think it is either, but
something ain't firing. I'll bet on that pony for a minute, but I don't know how much gas is in the tank before something implodes. I mean, we're all the biggest Elon fans, so, but he's a human being.
He might just be an alien. Well, he might be an alien.
He's an alien. 100% alien.
What if Elon isn't human and he's a fucking bot?
That would make a lot of sense.
Because I don't know if you saw Vern's, every year, right? He always, in his newsletter, he always talks about the top five book recommendations going into the new year. Usually recaps what were the top books in 24. So it's kind of what he talks about heading into 25. 3 years in a row, You know what's on that list? There's only one book that he's ever put on multiple lists. He's put it on there 3 times. Elon. It's the autobiography that the one that came out about 3 years ago. Elon.
The person followed
the big one, right? Yeah. And he said, read it again. And he said, read it again and read it again. He said, like, Vern Harnish is like, he goes, he's like through his 4th or 5th time reading it. He goes, I'm still pulling out things. And I think that's like with anything great, right? We talk about this all the time with great books, right? You're going to receive basically where you're at, and you're going to get out of it what you need. And that's why, you know, great reference manuals, great books are always really important to revisit.
Well, I mean, it's the pack's going to move at the pace of the leader. And I think that's why we've felt the shot of adrenaline in this company since Leo was named CEO. And can you believe it's coming up on a year?
Wow.
You know, I think, was it April or May? It'll be a year with this man leading, and dang, I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he fits it all in, and he still is disciplined enough. He has family nights and spends time with his kids, and then he goes skin diving and like spearfishing in Miami, and he still is doing an amazing, remarkable job actually. So, but great chat, guys. Love chopping it up with you guys about this. Let's talk a little bit about our friends in California that are suffering some serious devastation. Their lives are never going to be the same again. And it's not. There's this fire discriminated against no one. All classes have been affected, and you know, as it relates to our real estate business, California's already had issues with, you know, before any fire would affect a neighborhood or a home, their process to get anything done, from new construction to putting up a fence in the backyard, there is a backlog just to get a building permit. So, and that's just a fact up and down the coast. So, you know, now we have over 9,000 structures completely destroyed, families displaced. They have to live somewhere. So I actually got a message from an EXP agent on the East Coast that her sister lost her home in the Palisades, and they were looking for something to rent. So when you have now all of a sudden all these people they got to live somewhere. Yeah. Some of them are going to maybe move in with mom and dad or their kids or a relative temporarily. It's not a permanent solution. And it's going to take forever to rebuild. Now we have rents are going to start to climb because of it, and it's already obscenely expensive to live over there already. What are y'all's thoughts on where this recovery can go from here?
I mean, it looks like hell on earth over there. I'm crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's going to take time. I mean, you know, hopefully, you know, they're just not good at change over there. So, you know, unless, you know, the federal government steps in, which Trump probably will, to do something, you know, California just seems like they're just going to continue to mess it up and make it difficult.
Yeah. They interviewed Josh Altman, and he said that, you know, it's worse than you can imagine. Like, whatever you can think how bad it is, it's way beyond that. And I believe him.
Yeah.
And it's very sad. It's one of these things, like, we feel handcuffed because you know, the thing that I love a lot, we might be found like criticizing real estate agents, you know, a lot, and they're, you know, large percentage are coachable and this and that. But, you know, the one thing that I love about being part of the real estate community is they're the most giving people, shirt off your back. That I will say the majority are. And I don't know why that is. It's kind of interesting. I don't really identify other large conglomerate professionals, like, for instance, attorneys. Nothing against attorneys. A lot of my close friends are attorneys. I just don't see that as a personality trait transferring over to another large trade group. But we are. So I know that obviously our company is already doing, you know, big things to raise money and help people that are in need. But really that's the short term. I mean, we know that Biden was generous enough that, he authorized $720 per person that got displaced. I ain't going to comment further on that. But again, it's a short-term fix to a long-term problem. Long-term, it's going to take forever to build Malibu back. It's going to take years, and we got the Olympics, I think, are supposed to come to LA, right? In 4 years. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. It's in the, coming up. I think to your whole point out, right? You think about even things over the last, the country over the last 6 months, right? You got the Carolinas, you got Tampa, you got, all the areas that have been hit. And I have more faith that things will move in a better direction in about a week than I would if that wasn't the case. And so, it is. It's just sick to watch it.
Yeah. Yeah. A little from this article from Inman, what people are hearing is, okay, the reality is that what's fresh right now is people quite literally figuring out where they're going to live for the next 90 days, let alone the next 12 months, 3 years, 5 years. Their focus is, where am I going to put my family? Mm-hmm. Where are they going to live? How am I going to put a roof over their head? And, what am I then it's long term. And I got, I have to say that there's already this surge of people moving from California to Texas, Florida. I think that this is going to increase it. It's going to increase the surge. People are going to get out of there. Mm-hmm. And the other part of this is that insurance companies have been running from California for the last 12 to 18 months. I mean, they're running from a lot of places, even Florida as well. But they're just not they're not going to be insuring. Like State Farm, I think, pulled over 90,000 policies. They're not renewing them. So these people that have State Farm, which is probably the one most conservative, you have to have really good credit to get State Farm. You know what I mean? It's not like a Geico or anything like this. They're pulling out. They're like, we're out, guys. We can't do it, because they're trying to subsidize so you have insurance issues. There was a statistic, and I don't know the exact statistic, but there's a high percentage of deals that fall out at the end, sales, because of insurance, because they can't get the premium to a reasonable amount to where they can even afford the payment on the house. So the deal falls apart because of insurance. This is just going to skyrocket those premiums. This ain't going to send them in the southern direction. They're going north, which is going to force more people out. It's not a good situation. But I think, one solution for some families, maybe not all, hey, come to Texas, come to Florida, Ohio, come to some of these other areas where, there maybe, I don't know. Florida is going to have a housing shortage as well, if not already. I don't know about Texas. You guys, your prices aren't going lowering either.
Yeah, I talked to Chris Waters earlier this week. He said Austin's inventory is up tremendously. Values are, prices are coming down. It's rough in Austin right now. And Dallas, it's a little bit slower, but we're not seeing the price drops or any of that kind of stuff. So it seems like they just are a one-off situation where they overbuilt for, what jobs and, what there was a ton of people moving there. I know they overbuilt in terms of apartments, but it's really interesting to see that their market is suffering so much and that DFW is not, but yeah, so to be determined.
Yeah. I think that is kind of the feedback I've got out of Florida as well. I mean, inventories are creeping up and prices are not backing up a little bit, but they're not jumping. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how things play out over the next 60, 90, 120 days.
Awesome, guys. Well, hey, good talks. Our prayers are with the people in California, and obviously we want them to recover as soon as possible, and this all to start on the recovery path, because right now they're still fighting it. They're still losing. losing homes every day. So prayers to California and LA area. That's about it, guys. Other than that, let's keep cranking. The future is looking bright.
Yes, sir. And I think just from an EXP standpoint, they're back at NASDAQ next week on the 21st, right after Monday. And Monday's a big day, and also Tuesday's going to be a big day with EXP at NASDAQ.
Yep. Tune
OH.
Texas.
Let's go.
All right, guys. Appreciate you. Awesome.
Appreciate you guys.
See you guys. See ya.